All right, council, you all ready? Everybody's good? Perfect. So I would like to call to order the District of Sechelt regular meeting of council for Wednesday, March 2nd, and acknowledge that we are on the territory of the Sechelt Nation. We have an amended agenda, and I know most of council indicated they had the amended agenda. Councillor Scott, do you have it? Awesome, good. All right, so I would look for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And I'd look for a motion to receive all the staff reports. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Then we have no appointments or delegations, but we do have a proclamation. So I will read proclamation. This is item 4.1. Proclamation, Social Work Week, March 14th to 20th, 2022. Whereas the primary mission of the social work profession is to enhance well-being and help meet the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable in society, and whereas social workers know from experience that poverty and trauma can create lifelong social and economic disadvantages, and social workers help people in every stage of life to function better in their environments, improve their relationships with others, and solve personal and family problems, and whereas social workers are change agents who put the ideals of citizenship into action every day through major legislative, regulatory, and social policy victories. And whereas social workers support diverse families in every community, understanding that individuals and communities together can bring about group change. And whereas research shows that all people, no matter their circumstances, at some time in their lives may need the expertise of a skilled social worker. Now, therefore, I, Darnelda Seegers, on behalf of the District of Sechelt Council, do hereby proclaim that the week of March 14th to 20th, 2022 shall be known as Social Work Week in the District of Sechelt. And we have two speakers here with us tonight to speak to this. We have John Richmond, who's the BC Association of Social Workers Branch Chair, and Casey Laviolette, VCH Social Worker. Take it away, gentlemen.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having us. Thanks, Darnelda, for reading that out. I know many of you through my role with VCH, but what you may not know is I'm also the Vice President of the BC Association of Social Workers. So I'm here on behalf of them as well, joining John, who's our regional representative. We're very grateful to the district for making this proclamation, and social workers are at work here in your community, in healthcare, in child protective services, in private practice, in anti-poverty advocacy, and many other areas. We had a meeting with Gibson's Council last night too, and they also made a similar proclamation. Something I neglected to mention, which I'd like to say tonight, is that we at the association, and certainly I as an individual, recognize the terrible role that social work played with First Nations here in Canada and in British Columbia, and here in the territory of the Sechelt Nation. And we are very much committed to reconciliation and are working towards improving how social work supports and acknowledges and respects First Nations, Métis, and Inuit of this country.
Thanks very much, Casey. I'm not sure what more I could add to that, except to say that social workers have been on the front lines, of course, throughout the pandemic on the coast, working in a variety of fields, and also continue to be on the front lines of the toxic drug supply crisis, which I just came from a meeting at SFU on that very topic. And that will continue to be a challenge going forward, I know, for folks on the coast. So much appreciate the district for proclaiming Social Work Week. And we look forward to being partners in the well-being and wellness of the Sunshine Coast. So thank you very much, Council and Mayor. Have a good evening.
Thank you for what you do. We really do appreciate it in our community. All right, we will move on to minutes of the 3:30 p.m. Special Council meeting of February 16th, 2022. For adoption, I'd look for a motion to adopt. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then item 5.2, this is minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of February 16th, 2022. First, are there any errors or omissions in these minutes? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to adopt. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then final, the minutes of the 3:30 p.m. regular council meeting of February 23rd, and this is for adoption. Again, someone to move and second? Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to item 7.1, let's do business arising from the minutes. Any business arising from any of those minutes, from those council meetings? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 7.1. This is on page 16. This is minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of February 23rd, and this is for receipt and endorsement. First, any errors or omissions in the minutes? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to receive and endorse. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Now we'll move on to our bylaws. So this is item 8.1A. This is adoption of bylaw notice enforcement implementation amendment, bylaw number 515-7, 2022. And I look to our chief building official, Mr. Nyhus.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't really have anything to add to the request for decision, but I'm here to answer any questions should Council have them.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? So this was an amendment or an addition, a change to the bylaw to allow enforcement of stop work orders. And we're looking for adoption. Councillor McLean?
Yeah, I'll move recommendation 2 that council adopt bylaw notice enforcement implementation amendment bylaw number 515-7, 2022.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Moving on to 8.1B. This is District of Shop bylaw number 515-7, 2022. A bylaw to amend bylaw notice enforcement implementation bylaw number 515, 2012. And I'd look for someone to move adoption. Moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Having no new business, we will move on to item 10.1. This is engineering and operational considerations for Sunshine Coast Drag Racing Association request to use Sechelt Airport. Mr. Dillon, over to you.
Yes, Your Worship. No formal presentation for this. The report is thorough and speaks for itself. I'm here to answer questions. Just like to say that the report's focus was limited in scope to engineering and operational matters. There may be other considerations in terms of long-term planning or economic benefits and disbenefits, but I'm focused mainly on engineering and operational type issues. So I didn't look at those other aspects, and Council may wish to discuss those, but I'm here and available for questions.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to speak quickly to the largest dollar item on there, which is the building of the road. So I just want to know a little bit more about this road, where exactly it's going, and what alternatives we may have. I think there's a few entrances into the airport that could be used.
Yeah, I think just through Your Worship, I think to answer that, probably best if I maybe share my screen for a bit here. Are we all seeing the same thing? We should be seeing a map. Okay, yep. Here we go. Yeah. So the road shown in black here is what staff proposes the access road. The old access road got removed after the construction of the runway expansion. Our consultant recommended that it be swung out further And that's not shown here, but it would be more, I guess, to the top of the screen here. So I don't know if you can see my cursor here. Can you see the pointer? Yeah, so it would come out here and join in there. That was to create more, room and not interfere with sightlines. In the long term, though, if we were to expand the runway even further, then that new road would also have to be removed. So that is a consideration. And so, but the cost presented was for constructing this road here, this scenario that's shown here. Sorry.
Thank you for the. Yeah, I also see there's a green line and a red line. What are those, just briefly?
Yeah, so the green line is just the existing road that it can be used to access the north west corner of the runway, but the issue with that is that, sorry, somebody told me I can't be heard. How's my volume? Good.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, that can access that side of the runway. The problem with that, though, is because you're crossing across taxiways and there's a secured gate that would require coordination with airport staff and the manager, and it's not ideal from an operational standpoint to have that. And then the red line is a temporary road that's being used to access the observatory. It's mostly on Crown land, and it's one way for a stretch and would require upgrades. And so in order to do those upgrades, we'd have to cost that out. And also, just one second. Excuse me, is there an issue with my audio?
No, we can hear you just fine.
Yeah, just one
Does it
second.
sound in the room?
No issue.
You're muted, Darnelda.
Yeah, you started for the first split second, and then after that, nothing.
Sorry, I'm just resolving some audio issues here. Just one second. Just one second here.
I've reconnected to, oh, perfect, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. So
Okay, so
while you were
okay, so
speaking-
sorry, I had
while you were
somebody.
speaking, I guess the other counselors who aren't here could actually hear you, but down here in the room, we couldn't hear a word you were saying.
Okay, yeah, that was
So we got
confusing for
kicked
me.
off.
That was confusing for me because I had our corporate officer come in my office just now saying nobody can hear me, and she was so I was kind of confused because some of you could hear me and others could not. So okay, clearly my microphone's working, and it might have been an issue on your end.
It was an issue on our end,
Okay, thank you.
and we've corrected that, yes.
All right, all right. I'm glad. So do you want me to take it from the top this now? So
The last that we heard here was the road could come in and connect further up by, along the line of,
Okay.
basically it was like trees. That's the last we heard down here.
okay, so let me just take it from the top because it won't take me that much longer. So the road shown in black here is what staff proposed as a replacement for the access road that got removed. And our consultant has recommended to swing out further out and join here to create more room for safety and clearances. Now, if we're to extend the runway again, which is a long-term plan, I understand, we'd have to take out the rebuilt access road. the 100,000 that's presented in the report is on this scenario that's shown here with the black line. The green line is an alternative access that can access the north west side of the runway. And that's not ideal because there's a gate there, require coordination with staff and the airport manager. So that's the green line. And then the red line is a temporary road. It's a logging road that's being used to access the observatory after the old access road got removed. And in order for us to facilitate use of that in the future, there are portions that are one way, so the road would have to be widened, and there's going to have to be upgrades to the gravel surface because you understand it is rough. And furthermore, it is on Crown land. So we'd have to go through some sort of provincial approval process, which would likely trigger archaeological and consultation or some First Nation processes as well in terms of engagement. So those explain those 3 access points. And if there are any more questions on that, I could stop sharing my screen. And I believe it was Councillor McLean that initially asked this question. So does that answer it?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any other questions on the road access or comments on that? Councillor Todd.
Thank you. I guess my question is, when we've got to upgrade the road surface and the section that's one way, my understanding from having traveled those roads up there is that's basically from where it leaves the northwest directional Forest Service road and comes down through the airport fence. Is that generally correct? Like that's a fairly short section of road.
Could you repeat the last part, please?
My understanding is that it's from the observatory through the fence just up to where it connects to the Forest Service road that would have to be upgraded. I think the Forest Service road itself is actually fairly robust.
Yeah, through your worship, I haven't personally driven that road, so based on the aerial photography, I would concur with that assessment. It looks like it's that particular portion that would need to be widened. It still is on Crown land, and so we'd have to go through the processes involved in it. We actually we haven't looked at the detailed costing of that option. So if this is a direction that we were that we would like to pursue, then we would have to go through a more detailed exercise and what would be involved in developing and costing this road, and what the timelines for approval would be from the province.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Thanks, Mayor. Just for clarity, dealing with the access road that we lost with the project, that's outside of a drag racing issue? Would we have to do this anyways, I would assume?
Are you talking about the logging roads or the black?
Potentially the Black Line Road. Are we looking at having to rebuild an access road outside of the drag racing issue? Like, even if we weren't talking about drag racing, would we be looking to rebuild an access road, I guess?
Not necessarily. I think the access road was an option that was explored, and I guess the triggers would be for facilitating drag racing and access to the observatory. It might be a better option to look at developing the red road that I showed that Councillor Toth had asked about. So it was an optional item in our runway extension program. So yeah, I don't know if we would necessarily have to rebuild that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
And sorry, just a correction on a previous point I made is that the 100,000 is based on the consultant's scenario where the road swings it a little bit further out away from the runway.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess just to sort of follow up with where Councillor Rowe was going, maybe Councillor Scott has the answer to this, but is the road access that we have to the airport and to the runway sufficient if we do have an emergency up there? Is that for a service road sufficient for alternative emergency access, or really is an alternative route or widening that access something that we should be looking at, whether or not we originally intended to? Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to that. There's multiple accesses on the south side to get into the airport there. So the need for a road along the north side it's not required, and my preference would be to expand on the red road if it's so called. Then it's get the permits in, widen it out, and then if we eventually down the road we're going to want to develop that north side of the airport, we're going to have to build an access in there eventually, and running along the side of the road or running along the end of the runway is not going to be the option, because we just can't have steady traffic along that side while the airport's operating.
A question for Mr. Dillon. My understanding is that road is also the access to Dakota Ridge. So I'm wondering if the regional district actually has some kind of access agreement for that road already.
Yes, Your Worship. That's a good question. What I didn't, as part of our exercise, it is more of a planning kind of airport long-term planning type exercise. We didn't look at the feasibility of what would be involved with upgrading that road. And there's lots of different ways you can access that side. I guess would be the north side of the runway. You could even look at maybe creating a new road off of that red road that would go straight. So I think we'd have to go through a detailed plan of how we go about doing this and what the best options are, in light of the fact that there are these long-term plans to maybe extend the runway or do other things there. So we didn't go into detail on what would be involved with expansion of that Dakota Ridge or the logging road that's currently used to access the observatory.
Thank you. Any other questions on the report? I have a letter here to read from the Drag Racing Association, but I'd like to ask, get any other questions? Councillor Toth?
I have a bunch of questions, which I did forward to Director Dillon. So it's mostly going to be, responding to the questions that I've already asked, just so that the gallery hears it and anybody watching on YouTube hears it. So the $5,000 estimate that's provided on page 31 to reinstate the pavement markings from Jake's Construction, is that for all the runway markings, just what's been affected? I believe in your response you'd mentioned Jake's was saying thermoplastics, and so is the current markings thermoplastic, or is it highway paint right now?
Yes, through your worship, that's a good question. So the current markings are thermoplastic, and the cost assumed the replacement of the first 150 meters of those markings, all the markings. The approach taken at other airports where this is allowed is that they use stencils and they touch them up with paint. And so if we're to adopt that kind of a method, the 5,000 could come down to 2,000 or less. So this is 5,000 is, I would say, a conservative estimate of what would be required.
Any other questions or comments? Nobody else is coming forward. Councillor Toth, continue on.
I guess I will keep going. There's a traffic rated pulpit mentioned in there for $7,200. That would be only required if they maintained the current spacing for racing, is my understanding. I guess if they were able to race closer together, we wouldn't necessarily need the traffic rated pulpits.
Yeah, that's correct. Right now they space the races, I believe, about 6 meters apart. And I've did a little research and I've seen that it is in some scenarios, they're spaced a lot closer. So if we can get them between those lights, then perhaps we can avoid having to temporarily remove them during a race or have traffic rated boxes for them. And I'm having my manager of municipal construction and infrastructure renewal in the background just give me some information. So I'm going to correct a previous answer I gave you, in that the pavement markings right now are not thermoplastic. They are in fact highway paint.
Okay, I just wanted to touch on that real quick
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that was something that we were talking about having to redo every couple of years, and the oils in the fresh asphalt would affect. So that's thank you for that. Thank you for that correction. The last question that I've got, I think for right now, is in the report, you mentioned that the rubber deposits can be mitigated through immediate post-racing runway sweeping. I just wanted to what sort of a scale of sweeping are we doing? Yeah, what's actually required to clean the runway after an event? Thank you.
So through your worship again, unfortunately, I haven't seen how the operation of cleaning has happened in the past. I imagine it can be done with a skid steer, or which is a Bobcat's a type of skid steer with a brush attachment on it to do initial sweeping, and there may be some pressure washing afterwards. If that is I mean, that can be tried, and it might be effective in removing most of it. There are specialized pieces of equipment, though, at large airports that only do this rubber removal, but they appear to be quite large, and I haven't gotten a cost estimate for them, but I would imagine they'd be quite expensive pieces of equipment. So then you might be looking at a rental scenario that might make more sense in that case. But hopefully a combination of a brush and pressure washing would do the job.
Thank you. I have a question about the lighting. I know that the RFP has gone out. What kind of time frame are we looking at for installation of lighting?
Yes, thank you for the question, Your Worship. So the lighting tender call period is happening right now. The timelines I have been given is that the tender will close on March the 14th. And within that tender call, we've identified July 29th as the desired substantial completion date. So there's some flexibility in there. And once a contractor's in place and we've sent out the award letter, they will come back with a schedule on when they intend to do this work. Typically, you get better pricing with more flexibility. So if we were to be too prescriptive on the timing of the work, we would likely get a higher price. So yeah, we've set that at July 29th.
And do we know if actually obtaining the materials is going to be impacted by delivery? You know, like supply issues?
Thanks again, Your Worship. Yeah, that's a difficult question to ask or answer. Sorry, in this the current environment. I think. I mean, we've given our schedule to these contractors, and we. The hope is that when they respond to our tenders, they do so with the schedules that we've given them. So, if there's some change, that will come out during the pre-construction meetings and award meetings before we award the contract. But the sooner, now that we're doing it in March, we should have a good couple months of lead time for them to order these. And I don't know precisely where the lighting comes from, but hopefully they're somewhere in North America.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Last one for now, I promise. For us to do this road upgrade, I'm wondering I know that there are certain things we're going to have to take on, archaeological work, things like that. Is there opportunity for community partnerships, perhaps the Drag Racing Association, to try and get some sponsorship or some donations from Lehigh or Swanson's or whoever? Especially if we go the red route, which is the shortest. I think it's the shortest option that needs to be upgraded. Is that a possibility, or does it all have to be done, in-house and what have you?
Through your worship, I think the main goal of engineering and operations division is just that the final the final infrastructure gets built to standards that we would normally build our standards or infrastructure to. So partnerships or how they get built, I think the methods of those can be worked out. And I think if just as long as there's some oversight involved and it's being built to proper standards, and because ultimately we end up inheriting infrastructure built by others, and oftentimes it's not built to the proper standard. And in those cases, we can find ourselves in a situation where our operation and maintenance costs are higher than what they should normally be. And I think that's our main concern. I think there's examples, although I can't think of anything specific right now. I'm sure there's examples right now within Sechelt where other organizations, charity organizations, have built infrastructure, and some of it's good and some of it's not so good.
All right, any other questions at this point? If not, I will read the letter that was sent to us earlier.
I do have one thing to add before you read that, Your Worship. Just some additional information that has come my way is that the consultant did contact potential bidders, and there are currently no issues with supply of the lighting, but we don't know if recent world events are going to impact that.
Thank you. All right, so this is a letter received actually today, March 3rd, 2022. Dear Mayor Seegers and District of Sechelt Council, discussion of engineer's report at March 3rd council meeting. The SCDRA has read the engineering report on the airport runway, and we ask council to bear the following comments in mind when it discusses the report as part of its deliberations on granting permits to the SCDRA. The engineering report does not explain why or whether its table of potential costs has never been required or charged to the Sechelt Airport or paid for by District of Sechelt. Since August 1999, all preparation, remediation, and site maintenance of grass areas and gravel roads has been carried out and paid for by SCDRA volunteers using their own machinery and materials. Has District of Sechelt ever borne the kind of costs listed in the engineering report? Given the superior strength, quality of materials, and more stable roadbed of the new roadway, we expect any such work and its cost to be lower now than ever before. The DOS engineering report implies that the use of cars for 5 days in a year is problematic, yet it makes no reference to the 365 days a year on which aircraft land and take off, including occasional flights which the races have halted to accommodate. Yet for this regular aircraft activity, and the DOS reveals no costs or work whatever, even though these are the district's airport's responsibility. Why? The SCDRA has already presented to DOS examples of the technical and regulatory requirements for airport runway cleaning. You have copies, but in case your engineer does not cite them, we ask you to bring the following into your discussion. We assume that Sechelt Airport obeys the normal protocols for runway cleaning. All airports remove rubber from the runway surface periodically. The buildup of rubber marks is routinely checked by any airport. Number one, aviation regulators use ICAO standards for guidance. The US FAA advises checking, not cleaning, rubber deposits every week for runways with 210 or more daily landings. Number two, International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, recommends that a runway should be cleaned once a year if it receives from 1 to 15 daily plane landings throughout 1 year. Most of the light planes using the DOS airport are capable, and advertised as such, of landing on grass, gravel, glaciers, sandbars, beaches, any flat surface that's long enough. With landing speeds of 43 knots or 50 miles per hour and takeoff speeds of 50 knots, 60 miles per hour, the new conventional asphalt runway with normal rubber marks cannot sensibly be deemed problematic. 20 passenger business jets routinely land in pouring rain at over 100 miles per hour on YVR's rubber-marked runways with no braking problems. The SCDRA sees no technical reason or community value reason why the District of Sechelt should refuse to issue use permits as it has done for 22 years. On behalf of the Sunshine Coast Drag Racing Association, David Kipling, Membership Secretary. Council, any questions or comments? Councillor Scott?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's a number of concerns with the letter here that don't really reflect the actual what is truth and reality as far as airport operations. So right from the beginning, the whole reason we've moved forward with resurfacing the runway and extending it is to bring the airport up to standard and start utilizing it for what it's supposed to be, which is a community airport that supports everything within our community, and also, you know, emergency assistance in the event that we need it. We certainly saw how general aviation has helped out with the floods that we had in November. A number of airports around the province were utilized to move supplies and take care of communities that were cut off when the roads were washed out. And now that Sechelt Airport has been redone and expanded and we'll have the lights in, it just adds to our ability to service our community in the aviation role it's been designed for. Just going through this, the costs involved of maintaining the runway, I would say, the airport's been neglected over the years, and now that we have this new asset, we will want to maintain it and take care of it so that we're not having to do this in another 20, 30, 40 years, hopefully. Hopefully we're at a stage where we need to expand it again. So comparing our airport to Vancouver it's just not reality. They have very large airplanes that are hundreds of thousands of pounds landing on that runway. They do have braking issues. That runway is 10,000 feet long, and every day, every hour, they go out and do runway surface friction reports that the airplanes have to take into account and work into their landing calculations to make sure that they have the required distance based on the braking capacity for those aircraft to land. It's just when you get into big airports like that, it's reality. Now, is there rubber deposits on the runway? You betcha. But the difference is when an airplane is landing on the runway, it's coming from a stop and then rotating up to the forward motion of the aircraft. Whereas in the drag racing side of it, it's the torque of the engine that's accelerating that car and digging into the pavement and accelerating down the runway, leaving the rubber, tearing up the asphalt. It's a completely different process in how it affects the pavement. So it's just not even comparable. Now, the last paragraph there where it talks about the light planes using the airport. We have a runway now that's 3,300 feet long, and we have that ability to start moving into the next class of aircraft. So we can start getting King Airs in, we can start getting light jets in. They have that ability to operate off that length of runway. But the reality is they need all that runway. They're going to need 2,900 feet to stop. And for them to come in and need the braking capacity to stop within that distance and then hit residual rubber that's left on the runway, that will cause issues with the braking, will cause issues, and we'll see runway overruns. So it's not just the little airplanes that use that airport anymore. We're big enough now that we can take bigger aircraft that will still use that whole runway. So it's there's lots of pieces to this. It's really easy to poke holes in this letter. I have sympathy for the drag racing community. I want to see it move forward, but I think we need to work with other solutions to allow the drag racing to continue. And I've had conversations with them. We've walked different areas of the airport that we can look at to have land, and maybe we can run a parallel strip and have more access to it. There's other solutions here, and we just need to start working those out rather than targeting the new runway that we have.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the letter? All right, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. It's not so much a question on the letter. It's, I'm not even going to pretend to be anything remotely understanding of the aviation industry, which is fine because we've got Councillor Scott that can answer these sort of questions. But I'm wondering, it kind of sucks the way this has unfolded over the last couple of years. And so I guess my question sort of for Councillor Scott is from a maintenance and operations perspective, yes, our runway previous to the upgrades, had 20 years of drag racing on it and the damages incurred and the failure of the runway and the surface itself and all that stuff. But my question is, if we're looking at building a parallel strip or we're looking at an alternative location, entirely, is there any long-term damage, I guess, that might occur from 1 or 2 years of being able to run events on that runway? Could it be used as a short-term, recognize, this is not going to be for the next 20 years, this is going to be 1 or 2 years, fundraise, we'll help you out, we'll help you with grants, whatever we can do. Let's build you a new proper facility, one that you can use 365 days a year. Is that going to cause any long-term effects on the runway?
I'm guessing you want me to answer that. The reality is, no, I think it's functional. Yes, we could make that work. Do we want to do it long term? No. Would we want to say, okay, we have 2 years to work together and find a venue? I think it's something that's workable, but there also has to be financial considerations for the period that the runway is in use, so that any damage is repaired, the runway lines are repainted. But I firmly believe it needs to be a finite, it needs to have an end, and have some options to move forward. I mean, I've walked that side with the drag racing community. We've had those discussions before. We just need to move forward with them.
Okay, so I'm going to address that because I've been involved in the airport committee. I've been to almost every one of the meetings. And I know that we have had the drag racing group attend, and quite a few of them are here in the gallery here at Municipal Hall. You guys should be here too. Anyway, I know that we've had conversations about the fact that we are upgrading the airport and that it could potentially stop the drag racers from being on there. I haven't heard, and it's a challenge to you guys here with me today, I have not heard the Drag Racing Association come forward with any kind of business plan or recommendation or ask for the district to work with you on another option besides the runway airport that we have. I have not heard that. So if you've said that at some point, great. You can reiterate that when you come to the mic, but I haven't heard that. So you could refresh my memory. Councillor Rowe, and then we're going to have the drag racers come forward.
Well, you just expressed the question I was going to ask around, because I know this has come up in conversation before, but what is the appetite from that group to seriously go down that road? And when they do speak, I wonder if they could cover off, just for some of us who, aren't familiar, what they currently in the past have done post-race as far as maintenance and cleaning goes. And also comment on, are they 6 meters apart, that piece, and what are their thoughts on being able to be closer than that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean, and then Colin Stracker. Come forward, Councillor McLean, while we're waiting for him.
Yeah, thank you. I prepared a few words and I just want to get in before the drag racers because they may be able to address some of the things that I bring it up. So I break this issue of drag racing at the airport down into 3 issues. The first one is, can the damage to the runway be mitigated and our asset protected? So from this engineering report, my conclusion is yes. We need to do more than what we're currently doing. We need to have regular sweeping. We need to have maybe yearly line repainting. We need to do pressure washing sometimes, and perhaps some kind of insurance or bond for protection of the lights. A burnout box will take most of the damage off the runway like they did previously while they're warming up their tires. But some of these costs for mitigations are going to have to go towards the association and the event. We have a lot of other events in Sechelt, and they don't cause the kind of damage or the potential. They don't have the potential for damage like this does to our assets in our community. So I think the damage to the runway can be mitigated. Second question I have is drag racing an appropriate use at the airport if managed? I believe yes. It's like many of the other events in our community. It brings a lot of tourism. It brings a lot of passionate people together. And that's the kind of stuff we like to invest in. We invest in events like Canada Day and other events around the community with staff support and direct funding. So I think when I look at the airport use of the airport, I think they have to work around it. There's no scheduled flights currently. What's in front of us right now is a 1-year agreement. What the request is, should we let the drag racing use the airport in 2022? Should that change? Yeah, probably. They should probably go to a multi-year agreement. But that's not what's on the table today. So when I look at it, I think we can work around it with how the airport's currently being used. So my final question is, how can we support drag racing? I think we can provide some of that support. We have the skid steer and the sweeper. We pick up garbage after Canada Day. We can help get some of that more power equipment to sweep the runway after every use. It's also looking at some of these options. I heard the concerns around ownership of the road, the North Road, the Red Road. We can put some time into understanding that, how to get proper rights there. So those are my major questions. And I think with support of the Drag Racing Association, we can really move forward on this. So I guess as we move forward, we need to talk about how can we manage drag racing better than what we've done previously. One of the comments in the letter is, why now? Why now? Because we have a very valuable asset there. Like Councillor Scott said, it wasn't maintained. It is worth a lot more to the citizens of the District of Sechelt and the Sunshine Coast than it was previously, just in terms of dollars. So we need to look at ways we can change our operations. Could we ask the drag racers to drive around the numbers so we don't have to repaint them as often? That seems like a simple change to me, but I'd love to hear from the drag racers. Can we do a better job of cleaning the runway? I think we can. And can we pass some of the costs for operating it to the users of the drag racers, like we do with the airports and the people who have hangars there? I think we can, and I think we need to ask more out of the drag racers to pay for some of these mitigative measures. So I think with all of that, I'd like to see us move forward. We have to make changes, but there is a path forward. And that's all I really wanted to say at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Stracker.
I've been told I got to get close to this.
Yes.
I appreciate the comments from the councillors, including Councillor Scott, who we've communicated quite a bit over the past couple of years about this. And just to make it clear, the whole north side of the runway, including the return, or what we call the return road from the far end of the runway, or that would be the east end of the runway, has all been installed by the Drag Race Association, including the pavement that's in front of the hangars that leads is a taxiway now that leads onto the runway. That was all supplied by the Drag Race Association. So it's not like we haven't contributed. It was a fair amount of money and cost incurred to the volunteers and so on at one time. Also, we did add pavement to the runway at various times to try and smooth it out. So that's just some of the things we've done. I'm not saying we've done a whole bunch, and no, we don't have a whole bunch of money. We're very limited in our funds. This is a community-based thing. It's a non-profit. We don't make any money. It's really that simple. So we're at the mercy of the district to allow us to race there, and we're certainly willing to look at different things that Councillor Scott had suggested at a meeting we had at the airport. Then I felt that was reasonable, but again, even paving a taxiway is something that's way beyond our means, even if we're in times where people are able to donate that kind of money. I doubt that we could find those funds that way anyhow. And we also have requested a couple of times now for a meeting prior to this meeting. Now we're having it anyhow, so we'll just get on with it. And that is that we do have a proposal ready to come forward about adding a concrete strip at the far end of the runway. So that would be the west end of the runway, and which would be about 120 feet. So that would mitigate any kind of damage to the runway. All the, as pointed out by Councillor Scott, all the tire turning damage that might be caused on the new pavement wouldn't be there. So by the time the cars hit the new runway, they'd just be basically rolling. So there'd be no torque damage, as he described, to the runway at the time. And I do really feel that a few times a year, even if there is larger planes scheduled to land, they can reschedule around that. I don't see that being an issue in the future. And also that we are willing to do whatever. We have a huge volunteer base, and we do a lot of work there all the time, and we have no problem with doing whatever it takes to make that work. And that return road, or that road issue, we looked at that. There is only one entrance on the north side, Eric, and that entrance is the one that were in the red. And we have looked at it. It's a bit rough, but we also have equipment, and we can go in and smooth that out if we have to. We have access to aggregate and things like that to improve that area if we need be to come in. However, the other road was a preferable way because it's easier for the participants and the guests to get in. Originally, when we started racing, I wasn't a part of the drag club, but a racer at the time. We have the original president of the club here tonight. And originally, we came in through the main gate. And the races were on the south side of the runway, and that's where the cars were parked and so on. So, and then eventually we did all the work on the north side so that we could have it there, and it was, you know, a safer event that way, that no one was involved with the planes. So, and of course, you know, the Drag Race Association is not looking for, you know, a big amount of time on the airport. It's very limited, and we're very careful, and we do take care of everything, and we have damaged lights before, and we have fixed them as well. So, you know, we have qualified electricians who are volunteers who are part of the Drag Race Association. So we are prepared to do everything that's needed. Just you can't really ask us to do much financially because we just don't have that capability.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Is there room on the end of the runway, on the west end of the runway? Because there's a ravine there.
Yes, I actually have something on my cell phone that I could show you, and then I don't know if you can show that to anybody, or we can maybe get a drawing sent to you, one or the other, but yeah.
Okay, if you want to email it to Jennifer, she could actually show it to all of us.
Al's going to do that. He's more technical than me.
Okay, then one of the people in your group sent us a list of airports that do allow drag racing.
Yes, that'll be Al, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So one of them I found on there was Alberni Valley. I mean, I went through all of them on the list and checked them all out. Alberni Valley, I found some information where it says it's no longer allowed at their airport. And Flynn Road actually stopped the drag racing at the airport. that they now do it on the street.
Yes.
So do you have any other details on that? Because that's one of the questions we have around, currently, we don't know if Flynn Road even knows, because we're in the same situation as what Port Alberni is. It's a Crown lease, and they gave us money for the runway.
Yes, no, and I understand that, but the councillors there made that decision, from what I understand, not to have that at the airport and to have it on the street, which is great, at least it's still there. But there is nowhere here that I've seen really that you could do an event like that because the roads aren't wide enough.
Right. I'm not talking about using the street as such, but
We could
it was
use
actually
Carey
the
Street,
province, right? And it was actually the province that shut it down.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I think the way I read it was because of the lease and giving the money to upgrade the runway, Flynn Road said if they wanted to continue drag racing, they actually had to buy the land. Like the city had to buy the land because it could no longer be the Crown lease.
Okay.
So we would be in the same situation.
It could well be that. I don't know. That goes beyond me.
Okay, so that's something that we'd probably have to have staff look into. Okay, so Jennifer is getting us something to look at.
I just see Kern with his hand up.
Yeah,
Director Dillon?
Yeah, while you're getting that map on your screen, Your Worship, I just would like to point out that I did attempt to reach out to these other airports that allow drag racing through email, through phone. Unfortunately, only 2 of them got back to me, and that was Swift Current and Kings County in Nova Scotia. Had some good email exchanges with them. I didn't attach those emails to the report, but they are available if council will want to see them later. But I guess the basic understanding I got is that there's been a relationship established in those 2 locations where they've made it work, and not that there's not issues, but it seems to be working in those 2 locations that I was able to talk to. And I would have liked to talk to more, but unfortunately they didn't get back to me. Thank you.
And Jennifer, are you ready for us? Not yet? Okay. So I just did some basic research on that, and I sent the information around to council, and I believe, Director Dillon, you got that as well. There are a few airports. Princeton and Alberni are no longer allowing drag racing. Lillooet, we all know what happened with Lillooet last year, so nothing's scheduled there. And then many of the others that were on the list allow 1 weekend per year. So Bulkley Valley, Soyuz, Bonnyville, and Kirkland Lake have 1 weekend. Usually it's a show and shine on Friday night and then a race on Saturday and Sunday. Preston, 2019 was their first year. They raced 1 day, and they have not had racing in 2020 and 2021. Probably because of the pandemic. Kings County, Nova Scotia, it is held at the South Shore Regional Airport. It's an unmanned airport with no runway lights. They have just recently added fuel capability to the airport. And the airport is maintained and operated by the local Recreation of Flyers group. In fact, the council actually gave them an award, I think 2 years ago, for actually keeping the airport open for all these years. They have 3 drag racing events in the year between May and September, depending on weather. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to speak briefly on the 1 day versus multiple days. Councillor Scott Toth and I had a really good visit with the Chatleach Drag Racing Club. And one of the key takeaways I learned there was that a big aspect of drag racing is the actual performance of how you drive. So they mentioned that it's essentially a race against yourself, and that practice and understanding how to launch, how to shift gears, and do that in a timely manner is key. So to have just 1 race a year really takes away from that. You need to build up those skills to really participate in this field that I think multiple races per year really enables.
Thank you. So I understand that they actually go down to Mission regularly for practice. Right, and that is something that the BC Drag Racing Association has shown, is that the most drag racing in BC has migrated to racetracks separate from the airport. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Yeah, just a further comment on that with the visit that we had to the chat team. They do attend Mission. It's expensive every time they go because of the ferries and what have you. They do have to miss school to do it because they're usually missing out on their Fridays. And in fact, I think one of the students was ready and prepared to skip his grad in order to race, and some friends and family of the team basically got him a flight home so that he could attend his own grad ceremonies. So, it's certainly it's something that they do because they have to, and because it's sort of their only real option through the most part of the year. But it's definitely not ideal for high school students.
Your Worship, we're still trying. We think one of the problems is that the file's quite large because of the map. So I think Jen's trying some other options. We still haven't given up yet.
So, and to further our conversation, which, has come up in with the councillors and so on, and it's been mentioned many times, this is a community airport and this is a community event. So we really sort of cherish that. And, there is facilities there. We've put in washrooms and things like that. So, there's no reason why there couldn't be other events at the airport as well to help support, whatever those costs might be. I don't know how many years ago now, maybe 10 years ago or something, we had a concert up there, and Trooper was there and things like that. So there's other uses that can be had there other than just the 20 airplanes that are going in and out of there right now. There's more helicopter flights than there is airplane flights right now. So there's that type of thing to consider as well. And so we're just hoping we can keep going for a while. And I like the idea of maybe looking into, as Eric had talked about, trying to find funding and being able to put in, we would call it a taxiway, for lack of a better word, which could be used pretty much full-time for drag racing, though it would never get used full-time for drag racing because I don't think anybody could incur those costs, the drivers included. So cars only go so long without having to get rebuilt.
Okay, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Jennifer emailed it out. I can't open that file, but I'm on my Microsoft Surface. I'm not on the iPad, so I don't know if anybody else can open it. A question for the association, and I'm sorry I can't be with you guys today to ask that, face to face. With regards to your event finances, what sort of a fee do you charge for people who are looking to race? What sort of fee do you charge for admission for spectators? How many participants do you usually get out at an event?
Typically we get about 500 people to events. Sometimes it's up to 1,000. We charge $10 for guests. Children under 12 are free. And the drag racers, I think we pay $40 or $50 to race. And then if you're a member, it's, there it is. If you're a member, it's a little bit cheaper, I guess. So the membership also is a financial stimulant to try and keep it afloat. The insurance is expensive and all the other things that go along with it.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to get this up on my computer, so let me see who else. Oh, there it is. Perfect. I can close all my other stuff up here then.
So what you're looking at there, that's the back property line. So, and at where the X is, that's where the burnout boxes are now, which is at the threshold of the runway. And we would propose to put in 120 feet there, or 119.9, and which should mitigate any kind of rubber ending up on the track, which that is a concern with the torque and things like that. And that's something that we can do. That's we should be able to fundraise and get that done. Now, the downside to that, I'm not sure what it would be, because it's sort of like extending the runway, and at the end of that, there's a bit of a drop off. But I'm sure that something could be put there or painted a different color or something like that that would alert the pilots that that's not the place to go down.
Okay, Councillor Rowe.
Well, first, I just wondered if Councillor Scott wanted to comment or anything on what we're looking at. And second, if I could just bring it back to my question around what you guys currently do to clean up after a race, for those of us who aren't familiar, and a comment of how far apart you are when you're racing. Thanks.
How far apart as far as the cars go?
Correct. Yeah.
Well, generally they're, if I'm thinking, because, I've worked the starting line quite often, there's a car would be somewhere there and somewhere there. So that's probably about, from there out would be really the maybe a little bit closer. Because the runway is quite wide. We don't use the whole runway, that's for sure. There's maybe, I'm not sure how wide the runway is. I think it's 60 or 80 feet, or was anyhow. Is it 75 now? Yeah.
I believe it's 75 now, is that correct?
23 meters.
No. And so, yeah, you can squeeze the cars together a little bit, but for safety, you don't want them too close together, because sometimes they can get a little bit, out of control, and you don't want them running into the other guy, so to speak. Though a lot of the tracks aren't quite narrow, so, yeah.
Okay, I think the concern was the new lighting that's in place. And if the cars stay where they have been in the past, it will actually take out some of the lighting.
I see. Well, I haven't been up to the airport for a while, so I haven't seen the new lighting, or I don't know if it's in already, or what the thought is there, but we can certainly find a way to work around that.
Thank you. And then Councillor Rowe's other question was, what do you do after a race to clean up the track?
We spend a lot of time there. Myself, I'm usually there the weekend before, the weekend of the race, and the weekend after, making sure everything is absolutely pristine and put away. There's nothing left. Now, we've been told that the rubber, mostly the rubber that's on the runway, is in the burnout box, but that became a concern that was brought up with Eric Scott and some of the pilots at the meeting we had. So those things we could attend to. It's not really a problem in that direction. We just never thought of it as a problem. So, and that was the first time it was brought up as an issue after 20 years. So I thought, well, okay, we can deal with this. It's not a really big issue. So that's something we can deal with. There's multiple ways of taking care of that. However, if we move that 120 feet back, that's a non-issue again as far as the runway is concerned. So, and I think that's maybe something that would be reasonable to look at.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. And then Director Dillon.
So with the proposal, I like the fact that it hopefully the wheel spin's done before they hit the end of the runway. It looks like we'd have to replace those threshold lighting pulpits to metal boxes and have removable lights. We would need the consultants to take a look at TP312, which is aerodrome standards that we had to build this runway to make sure that we're not violating any of the runway surface end areas for runway overrun requirements as far as putting concrete there versus anything else. So it's something that we would just need to do our due diligence on before we move forward with something like this to look at. So there's a few moving pieces to it, but something to look at.
Okay, so I have to tell you that the only part I understand was about replacing the pulpits and the lights. The rest of that, I had no idea what you're saying. That's okay.
Well, there's a manual that Transport Canada puts out that lays out the runway, the aerodrome standards for building a runways. The old runway was never built to any standard, and one of the things that we had to adhere to get all the grant money that we did is we had to build it to what's called an AGN2 standard. And part of that standard is runway overrun requirements. And there's certain materials that you're supposed to use in those overrun requirements. And I don't have that off the top of my head. I mean, maybe concrete would be one of them. I'm not 100% sure. We just need to make sure that we don't put this in and then all of a sudden lose the status and get in trouble with transport on what we've done here.
Thank you. Director Dillon, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, Your Worship. I was just going to clarify on a earlier question asked by Councillor Rowe on the spacing. So how we determined it in our report is the skid marks are quite visible in the ortho photography, and we have tools to measure the distance between those skid marks. So we measured that, and then the Sunshine Coast Drag Racing Association was quite generous and supplied me with a lot of photos of the races. So I was able to correlate that distance I'd measured off the mapping to what the actual photos look like, and just using a car scale was able to determine it's about a 6 meter spacing, which for those who don't do metric would be about 20 feet. So just a background around how we came about doing that.
Thank you, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I really like the idea of extending this runway, the additional 120 feet. My questions would just be on the transition. I guess you'd probably look for asphalt there as well, so that transition should hopefully be clean. But to Director Dillon, if we do go with the traffic-rated pulpits and then have the removable lights at where the runway is, the end is currently, do you know what those would look like, and might they cause any safety issues if we're racing over them? Or do you not have enough information, which is fair?
Yes, in response to that question, I haven't seen these personally. I mean, with any concrete pad that's constructed and it ties into the runway, I think a couple things need to be kept in mind here is that it's very important that the top of that concrete pad is flush with the asphalt runway. Because one thing we do, one thing I did get back from Kings County, actually in Nova Scotia, is that some of the flyers there with the concrete pads that they had at that airport were concerned that there's a little bit of a bump in that transition. So that's got to be done perfectly. And then the other thing is in terms of rebars details and making sure this thing is the right thickness and construct, that's important as well, because if the concrete pads, I've seen them, I've worked at other larger airports and I've seen concrete crack on around aprons and taxiways, and if they do crack, you can get some water in them, and if that water, there's a freeze thaw cycle, you could get heaving of these concrete pads, right? So I'm not saying that all this stuff won't be done perfectly when it's constructed. It's just things you need to bear in mind, that the pads would need to be constructed quite well if they're intended to be there for the long term. And with regards to the road boxes, I don't know. I haven't seen how they look like in real life, and I can try and dig up some more details from our consultant on what those look like, and perhaps Councillor Scott's seen them, but I haven't seen them personally myself.
Just so you know, we've had contractors give us quotes on that. So it's not like it's something that we would do a lot of the work ourselves, but they would be done through a contractor. So it would be professionally done, and yeah, it would be all of your concerns would be addressed.
Thank you, Councillor Toth, and then Councillor Scott. And did we get another photo to view? All right, Councillor Toth.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thank you. I just wanted to highlight there the 6 meters and the conversation around spacing for the association and for anybody in the gallery is page 28 of our agenda package. And so I guess pointedly ask the question, you know, if 20 feet has been the spacing before, 3.5 meters is approximately 3.5 meters, or I guess that's about 12 feet, is the spacing that was referenced at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And so if you guys think that you can race with only 12 feet between vehicles, you know, that mitigates the need for these traffic rated pulpits. You know, that mitigates the you know, a lot of the runway lighting or the end lighting issues that we're sort of talking about here. So I just wanted to check with the association if they would think that 12-foot spacing would be sufficient to save, you know, potentially $15,000 for pulpits.
I'm gonna hazard a guess and say yes, but I would have to check into that too.
Councillor Scott.
Thanks. So the challenge in the not changing out those pulpits is the idea with those launch pads is that they're already accelerating when they enter the threshold of the runway. So they're going to be passing those lights at fairly high speed. So I don't think we're going to be able to get away with not changing them out. Now, as far as the transitional bump goes, the way I'm reading that picture is it'll be beyond the threshold of the runway is where that concrete pad will be. So it won't be a concern for the aircraft because it's only into a runway overrun situation that they're going to get onto that concrete pad. So again, like I said, we have to make sure that the concrete meets that requirement for the runway overrun. But if it does, then it shouldn't be an issue because the airplanes won't be on it anyway, unless it's runway overrun. So the question for Mr. Stracker is, in that picture, you've got a 120 by 63 foot area there. The intent is to make that whole area one concrete pad, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McLean.
And I think Eric or Councillor Scott just asked it, but that is concrete rather than asphalt.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, no, we wouldn't use asphalt, so it would be concrete.
Perfect.
Okay, so then another question. This council has passed in our budget some funds to put together an airport master plan. We anticipate that there will be things like regularly scheduled service coming in, you know, charters, maybe training. We don't know what that'll look like, but we do know that the airport and the industrial land around the airport is an economic benefit to the community. It is one of the ways that we can look at potentially reducing taxes if we have more industrial-based, you know, business, more industrial tax base in the district. It will actually reduce our residential taxes. So that's an exciting opportunity for us to look at. Will that happen in 1 year? No. But could it happen in a few years? Yes. We could potentially be doing that. Is that something that the drag racers would consider putting something in where we can't guarantee that maybe 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, we could continue drag racing at the airport, depending on what industrial uses come in there. I mean, if we have a flight school, for example, they're going to be using the flight school quite a bit. And we've had 2 companies already come to us to talk about flight schools. And we've had already, since the airport has been expanded, we've had 2 companies express potential interest in doing regularly scheduled services here. So there is going to be additional use of the airport, which could put a stop to drag racing.
Well, that potential is there, but again, I'm just going to state that I don't see why a few times a year with a NOTAM up that schedules could be changed. I just, I run a business myself and yeah, you have to change your schedule every day, I'm sure, as you do here. So it's not really, in my view, a big issue. I'm sure it is in someone else's view, but I don't see why that wouldn't be, at least for a while. Again, we're a small community. I know that often I've heard, you know, well, look at Nanaimo. Well, Nanaimo's huge, and it's a center point, and it's a massive airport, and it's nowhere near any residential. It's only commercial out there. And this airport is near residential, and I think that you might find some pushback on the amount of noise that these larger planes are going to bring in, you know, so I'm just saying that. And as far as industry, I don't ever remember in all my years a government rolling back taxes other than the GST once got rolled back. So I don't think that's going to happen.
I'd like to see more industrial. That'd be good.
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. Has the drag racing group actually ever considered an alternative? You know, like Councillor Scott was saying, potentially another, you know, an apron or something, you know, a line.
Yeah, and we did discuss that, and we did discuss it with Councillor Scott, and I appreciated his input on that, and we certainly have considered it, and we again have looked at how much of the work we can do and that type of thing. But the one thing we can't do is the paving, you know, for instance. So that has to be contracted out, and that, you know, would be a fair amount of money. So it was presented to be by one of the members that possibly, and we're not very good at this kind of stuff, but, you know, that being that this, that we were able to use this gas tax money to help improve the airport, maybe we could find some of that in the future to help put the taxiway in that could be used as a runway or as a drag strip.
I guess we'd want to see that the drag racing group would actively be involved in putting something like that together. As a council, we're not going to take the lead on that. We would support something like that, but we're not going to take the lead. We would expect that to come from you.
No, and I can understand that, but we're approaching this right now from a you know, a perspective of what's available to us, and at this point in time, the most practical route would be adding a piece at the end of the runway that would maybe work for a few years, which will give us time to consider how we might approach building a taxiway but parallel to the runway that we could use for drag racing.
Okay. Council, any other questions or comments? How would you like to proceed? Councillor McLean.
I think I have a motion crafted. So I'll give it a shot and let me know, or I welcome feedback. Let's put it that way. So I will move that council direct staff to investigate Crown lease concerns, runway overrun requirements, and north access road usage. So that's the first one, just do some of that background research.
Okay, do you want to, could you repeat that again for our recorder?
Yep.
You got it?
So,
okay.
oh,
well,
she got it?
Repeat it once more for us.
So I'll move that council direct staff to investigate Crown lease concerns, runway overrun requirements, and north access road usage.
Okay, and that's been seconded. Any other questions or comments? That's not the answer that I don't think the drag racers are looking for. I think they're looking for us to approve something tonight, but I don't think we're at the place to be able to do that, given the other things that come forward. You have another recommendation after that? Okay.
I have another one, and then maybe another one after that, depending on how we go.
So let's see. So this one's been moved and seconded. So this is looking at the Crown lease concerns, the overrun something, and the runway overrun requirements, and the access road. Correct?
Yeah, it'd be the runway overrun requirements as it relates to putting in the concrete pad.
Okay, that's been added to the recommendation. That's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments on the recommendation on the floor? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, so that's passed. Okay, Councillor McLean?
Okay, so now we get into some of the more actionable stuff. I'll move that council direct staff to work with the Drag Racing Association to conduct improvements to the north access road and a launch area off the northwest end of the runway. And then I'm adding for completion by the 2023 race season.
Sorry, explain that recommendation. So you'd like the staff to work with the drag racers around the road access?
Road access
And the other piece?
and the extension, the 120 meters that they mentioned, 120.
But we don't know at this point whether or not we can do that.
No, but it's heading down in that direction.
Okay, is there a seconder for the recommendation? Okay, Councillor Toth has questions.
Yeah, just a quick question. I think that recommendation might be premature at this point until we hear back from staff on, I'd hate to direct staff to work on the road or, something with the Drag Racing Association, and then we get back that we can't touch it. So that, I suggest maybe Councillor McLean, you should put a pin in that until that report comes back.
I see a lot of head nods, so I think I will.
Okay, thank you. Director Dillon.
No, I just wanted to add, Your Worship, that we do have an airport master plan and money set aside for that. So I think some of these long-term planning initiatives probably be addressed in concert with that exercise. So I just from a staff perspective.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Okay, so now the last one is what do we do this year? I think given that we may have a solution that includes some capital improvements, I don't really want to see too much done that's a temporary nature. I'd like to see us move in the right direction. So I think it's allowing use in 2023 on the main runway without a launch pad, and just shift it down a little bit and just get it on there for 1 year.
Sorry, Councillor McLean, 2023 or 2022?
I don't know when it is anymore. 2022.
Okay, so would you like to make a recommendation? And there, if you go to page 33, there are actually some dates.
I'd like to hear thoughts on that.
Okay, Councillor Scott.
I think we still need to just confirm the lease at the very least before we can move on that.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I think, I sort of alluded to it there with my question of Councillor Scott about, runway damage over, a year or two of using the runway. I think, the report talks about options for mitigation. We're not going to see 20 years of damage in a single year's worth of racing. And I think this gives us a bridge, to that longer term option or medium term option, if you will. So I'm in favor of being able to provide them something this year, pending, whether we can do that in conjunction with our lease, because we don't own the airport lands.
Councillor McLean.
So the other concern is the access road and getting a proper lease on that, which I feel fairly confident in saying that won't happen for this summer, knowing how Crown negotiations go these days.
Councillor Kuster.
Just another question that I was just thinking about. How long would it take to do that 120 feet if it was everything was given the go ahead? Is that something that takes like time? I have no clue about timing, like for concrete work.
That's a fair question, and my answer would be unsure, because the state of things right now in construction and other things seem to be taking much longer than they have been in the past. Since this pandemic has come in, it's sort of changed how business is done, and also the amount of work that's going on the coast is fairly tremendous. But it would be something we would try and target sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Director Dillon and then Councillor Toth.
Thank you, Worship. I think another part of the consideration on the concrete pad, and might be a little bit of a wild card in terms of timing, is the availability of any traffic rated pulpits that we need to install, or removable lights. So that might also impact the time frame. And then I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but with the lighting contract too, if there's any coordination issues with that contractor, if they decide to take on the work in the month of July, there might be some issues there with having the drag race while they're doing the work. So there's some uncertainty there for sure. Probably by August or September, we have a better idea on some of those items.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Sorry, Director Dillon's comments. I totally forgot what I was going to ask. I'm going to put my hand down and come back to me.
All right, Council. Anything further? So at this point, we have a recommendation. Okay, Councillor Toth.
Sorry, I got it now. I believe the delegation did make reference to having previously used the Green Road. We'll call it the Green Road. I think it's technically the extension of Hilltop, but so I wonder for access for this year, if coordinating through the main gate would be a way forward.
Would anybody like to comment on that one?
There's that would boil down to if Greg Cable, if he would be in agreement with that, and it could probably be negotiated.
Okay, anything further? Councillor Scott.
Yeah, there are some challenges to that because of the proximity to all the airplanes over there, but it's not insurmountable provided that there's enough visual security on that route till they get to the other side, and that way, there's no worry on the aircraft or the other leaseholders over there for their needs. I mean, for one season, we could probably make it work if that was the need.
All right, so I guess the question is, do we require these answers back? We require the answer back on the lease piece before we can actually move anything forward. The others may or may not, I mean, they're probably not insurmountable this year for the other pieces, but we need the information back on the lease, because it was Flynn Road that actually shut the other one down. Councillor McLean?
Yeah, I guess just my concern is that we're getting closer and closer to the summer already, and there's time needed to prepare, to make travel arrangements, to prepare your cars, all of that kind of stuff. So I'd really like to have some kind of direction. I don't know how to get there at this point, though.
The other piece that nobody's talked about is the fact that Flynn Road just got split up into two different ministries. And so who knows how long it's going to take to get an answer back from them. They're all shuffling around. Councillor Toth.
I'm going to just throw some wording out there and we can wordsmith it or see where it goes. And I'm not necessarily moving it yet, but Perhaps that staff work with the SCDRA towards dates, access, and other logistics towards a 2022 race season, pending the verification of the airport lease uses.
Okay, Councillor McLean.
Let's try that again. I like the sounds of that. I'd just like to see maintenance added into that. So get some of the streets sweeping kind of stuff. I think that's a quick win that we can do.
Okay, I know that there are dates that have been requested on page 33. The concern I have about the dates of August 6th and 7th, we are anticipating or requesting inside of the RFP, let's see, where did I write that down, that a substantial completion would be July 29th. Now, there's no guarantee substantial completion will be July 29th. We don't know if supply is going to allow for that, if the contract will be done, et cetera. So August 6th and 7th may not be dates that would potentially work. We can't guarantee they'll be ready for that. Do we give permission to do that, not knowing whether or not we can actually fulfill that on our end? Other dates after that are September 4th, and that would be drag racing, and September 7th was indicated for a rain date. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I know, I don't know the RFP. I don't know what the contractor is going to come back with. I don't know, if they can work on one end of the runway during one set of race dates and maybe they're demobilizing the other set of race dates or something like that, which is why, in the wording that I sort of pitched forward there, I didn't specify dates specifically, just that maybe the staff work with the SCDRA and maybe one of those sets of dates doesn't work, but maybe they can have a set, later on, in September or what have you. But I didn't want to try and hamstring too much right away because we don't know what that RFP is going to come back with. We might find out that the lights are back ordered for 6 months due to other global events. So, yeah.
Okay, so another way to approach that would be how many race dates would we like to consider having them at the airport this year? And then staff could work with them to accommodate that. I mean, because I know that they also need to look at what races are happening everywhere else to try and work around them to have people come here, right? Because, I mean, there's a whole schedule, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the most important event is usually the August one because it coincides with the show and shine and things like that. Now, we don't know how that's coming this year yet either. But now that seems like we're in a pandemic seems to be, at least for now, ending. And so things might get back to some sort of normal. And so maybe that will happen then. And that's usually what we do is coordinate that event for that time because there's people who come and race and do the show and shine and so on. And it's quite an event, really. So if push came to shove, that would be the one that we would like to have. If the other ones can be done, that'd be great. If not, well, we can look to next year.
Thank you. Okay, so there was a recommendation put forward. I don't believe it was seconded. Could we have that recommendation again, Councillor Toth?
Having heard some feedback, I'm going to remake the recommendation because I didn't necessarily move it. I just wanted to throw the wording out there. So I'd like to move that staff work with the Sunshine Coast Drag Racing Association towards 5 event dates. With access, maintenance, and other logistics issues to be sorted out towards a 2022 race season, pending the verification of the airport lease uses.
And that's been seconded. Okay, so that's on the floor. Councillor Scott?
So I guess my question on that is how are we dealing with the costs of managing that? Is that part of the negotiation that staff's going to have to take on?
Councillor Toth?
I don't know, but I would welcome feedback.
Okay, Jennifer, do you have the recommendation? Do you want to read the recommendation once more?
I have that staff work with Sunshine Coast Drag Racing Association towards 5 event dates with access, maintenance, and other logistic issues to be sorted out towards a 2022 race season, also pending airport lease uses.
Councillor McLean?
To the corporate officer, I believe that we need to come back to council with a final decision once we have some of this logistics worked out, and that might be the point to discuss costs. So to the corporate officer, would this come back to council for a final decision on specific dates?
Well, ultimately, we're going to be issuing permits, and on that permit, we put dates. So on the other hand, you can delegate authority to staff. So, you know, if your motion is that you allow 5 dates subject to these items being addressed, and that staff be delegated the authority to issue the permits, you could do it that way. It's not the way we usually do it, but there would, you know, you'd have the authority, you have the ability to do that if you wish.
Councillor McLean?
That's not my intent. I'd prefer it to come back and then we can deal with the cost issues at that next meeting.
Okay, I have to say, I don't know if I'm in favor of 5 events. Given all the uncertainty, I think this is going to be a year where we're going to be figuring out what works. You know, are the lights an issue? Does their insurance cover the lights? They are expensive. And, you know, as they've indicated, they have taken out lights before. What is the cost of lights? Cost to replace one light is $1,000. That's a threshold light, and an airside light is $1,000. Is that something that they actually can support financially? I don't know that.
We've actually are looking into our insurance to see what it actually covers, and I believe it does actually cover that. But I'll let you know on that one. And five events. So just so you know, that typically we do 2 events that are 2 days. And one day is really a member day, which is a part day, maybe 4 hours or something like that. And we've done that at night as well, so shifted it into the evening. And if that's something that works, we're good with that. And then this is also to help prepare. You see, for us, you know, as with any organization, you know, volunteers are fairly lean. And so, you know, this sort of encourages more people to come by and help out with the project, because it's a massive undertaking to run these events. It takes a lot of manpower and a lot of hours. So, but that being said, it's not that important to have the test and tunes. Or, you know, if it's limited events this year, it's limited events. We can deal with whatever comes forward.
Okay, so if we said, I mean, the recommendation on the floor is 5 events, right? So we'd be looking at, you're looking at July 9th and 10th, and I think they're considering that 2 events. I would consider that 1 event.
Well, that's how we look at it too.
Yes, yeah. Okay. And then August 6th and 7th would be another event, and then September 4th. So the recommendation is 5, but that's actually 3, I think, in my world and in your world. And I'm seeing nods in the audience.
If you look into what was put forward, and I'm not sure, but usually the September date is a backup date for like a rain date. So we don't always take it if it's not a rain. If we haven't been rained out, then we don't use it.
Right, and then the other concern we have is the lighting. Right, we don't know about timing for lighting coming in right now. You know, as we said, we're wanting to get the lights in because we need lights for nighttime, right, at the airport. Okay, Councillor Toth and Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I had said 5 event dates, not 5 events, but 5 event dates. So I was looking at just the events they've got listed, and not the rain date only. Backup date. But, you know, I there's a lot of moving pieces to this. Then there's a few things we don't know. But I don't want it to just sit in limbo until we hear back about other things. Maybe I'd like to show some support for us moving forward with this. And if we take out the 5 event dates and just say dates, and maybe it only works out to be 3 dates this year, then so be it.
Thank you, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, just hearing some of the discussion between hearing the recognition from the association that maybe those testing tunes could be limited. That would be my perspective as well. When I look at protecting our assets and balancing that off with community need, those events have a lot more value, and that calculus is a lot easier for me. So I'm going to amend the motion from 5 event dates to 3 dates.
So that would be 3 days?
Yes.
3 days, thank you. There's a as an amendment put forward. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Is it seconded? Thank you. So the recommendation now reads.
I have that staff work with Sunshine Coast Drag Racing Association towards 3 event dates with access, maintenance, and other logistic issues to be sorted out towards a 2022 race season and pending the airport lease usage.
All right, so that would be how it would be as amended. So all those in favor of the amendment? Okay. Any opposed? Nobody opposed. So the amended motion is now on the floor. Would anybody like to speak to the amended motion? All right, I'm going to call the question on the amended motion. All those in favor of the amended motion? Thank you. Okay. Anything further that we need to provide? I'd look to staff, actually. Is there anything further that staff's going to need from us at this point in direction?
Yes, Your Worship. Just before I add to that, could we get a repeat of the resolutions that have been passed?
Thank you. Just one moment. We're just putting power to one of the computers because I think it was just about ready to die. So we'll have to give us one moment. We'll go to Councillor Toss before we ask staff to do that. They're getting tied up in cables.
The one thing that we didn't touch on with the motion, which I know was raised, was cost. I'm not comfortable trying to say, oh, it's going to be $2,000 or $1,750 or whatever, but I think, that can be sorted out in the background or as part of this process works through perhaps. But the one thing that I do know is it's not going to be $5 this year. It is going to cost more because of the new asset that we do have. So I'd be curious to hear if other members of council have opinions on it. And it seems that Councillor McLean does.
Councillor McLean, and then we'll also have to go to staff because I think that fee may be set in some of our policies or bylaws. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. Similar to Councillor Toth, I don't want to make this a motion at this time because so much is up in the air. But what I would like to see moving forward is improvements to that North Road somehow, the North Access Road. The Drag Racing Association contributing more costs to the operations, and a honest pursuit of that runway extension by all parties.
Thank you. Okay, so now for staff, we will have the recommendations read back. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. What I've got is that staff work with Sunshine Coast Drag Racing towards the 3 event dates with access, maintenance, and other logistic issues to be sorted, which I believe you had already passed. I missed it then.
Yes, but there was one before that, I think, as well.
Oh, my apologies. That council directs staff to investigate Crown lease concerns, runway overrun requirements, and north access front usage, and it was amended to include as it relates to being on a runway pad.
Thank you. Director Dillon, does that provide you with the information you were looking for?
Yes, it does, Your Worship. Thanks for those. So I think the resolutions, we can work towards those. I mean, as it has been stated during the previous council discussion, there's some uncertain items there. When and how would the concrete pad be constructed? If it doesn't get done in time, can we just for one season get away with not having concrete pads and have a race? Maybe that's, so I'd have to look into that and see, a cursory glance, it's probably workable for 1 year. So that would have to be figured out. And then also the post-event maintenance. And I believe currently we get maybe a $5 or $10 fee for the race, which is set in our bylaws, I believe. So we have to work that out. But the resolutions as read, we can work with those.
Thank you. And I think from the drag racing side, they're going to want to look at their insurance and see what it covers and
Yes, most definitely.
if there's additional that needs to be added there and what that cost is as well.
Yeah, there might be an additional cost. We've never had to use any of the insurance, so that as per usual, they win over us. So we'll find out for that though.
All right. Yes, sir.
Well, I have 1 minute. I've got to leave, but I just wish that.
Yeah, you need to come and speak to the microphone. And could you tell us your name as well then when you do it?
I was the founder and the president for the first 11 years.
Speak close to it, Wayne.
Oh, no, I'm going to stand. I'm having a bit of a problem here. Like you're talking about the Black Road. I could have that fixed and built in 2 days. No problems. No permits, no anything. Just get the D8 cap that we use to do the north side of the airport. Oh, sorry about that. And there's so many things. You're talking about the cement. Well, why? I mean, sure, you got rubber on the runway. So what? Go up to Edmonton International Airport where they drag race, and you'll see black on the runway. They don't remove it. It doesn't do any harm. So my point is, I think people are trying to make issues out of situations, and I can't understand it. We spent 31 days clearing the north side of the airport because we got together with the Pilots Association, the town of Sechelt, and us, and we got in 31 days of construction to take right from the runway all the way up. It used to be trees. Very dangerous to land a plane in it because deer and bear used to run out of the bush and you couldn't see them. We put in 4,000 feet of ditches. There's underground wiring. You're talking about lights. We put that in. And there's so much we did. We didn't need all of this stuff that I'm hearing about. Like I say, if you need that road done, give me 2 days, I'll have it done for you.
Yeah, I understand your point, and there are a lot of people who would come forward and do that. The issue that we have is if we do that and don't necessarily have the authority to do that, there's a lot more oversight these days than has been in the past. And if it's going to be done, we don't want somebody to come back after and say, you shouldn't have done that, and rip it out.
Okay, you wouldn't even know that I'd done it.
Yeah, well. All right.
Traffic would travel on it, but okay.
If we can get permission to do that, I'm sure that there are people who will.
What I'm getting at, I guess my main point is this club is very, very good at what they do, not just for racing, but when they say they're going to do something and get it done, it gets done. And no signed permission or anything. It's just, can you do this? Yeah, bang, it's done 2 days later. End of discussion. Thank you for letting me mouth off.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you, Wayne.
All right, I think we're finished with this topic for now.
Yeah, I think so.
And there's some work that staff will be taking on and the Drag Racing Association will take on as well.
Yes, most definitely.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
I look
Thank you.
forward to working with him as their committee lead when it comes to making that parallel taxiway into a strip.
You'll get it done.
Yes. All right, thank you. We're gonna pause for just maybe a couple minutes so everybody clear out here.
Yeah, can I just suggest a 5-minute recess? I need to run to the
Okay.
washroom.
5-minute recess. It is 8:55, so we'll recess to 9 o'clock. Okay, it is 9 o'clock, so if council is by their computers, we ask you to turn on your video.
Darnelda, it says the host has stopped it. I can't turn it on. Thank you.
All right, we have everybody back, so we can start the recording. It looks like it's paused. No, it's not. Okay. Yeah, okay, ignore me. We're coming back to the District of Sechelt Council meeting of Wednesday, March 2nd, and we're moving on to item 10.4, and this is 5550 Wharf Avenue Road Closure and Disposition. 10.2, what did I say? Oh, sorry, 10.2. I've got 10.2 up here and I've got 10.2 in front of me. 10.2, thank you. Permission to proceed, 5550 Wharf Avenue Road Closure and Disposition Lane. Report from our Development Planning Manager, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't have a presentation, but I'm available for questions. Basically, we have an existing lane in behind a property here. The landowner actually owns 3 properties surrounding 3 sides of the end of the lane, and they're proposing to close the lane and buy it from us, and then they would consolidate that area into their 3 existing properties to create 1 larger property off of Wharf Avenue. So there's a fairly extensive process for road closure and disposition, and we're currently seeking council's permission to proceed further in developing bylaws and going through the whole process. I believe council has discussed this issue a little bit a while ago, but it's been some time since we've been dealing with the applicant, and so we're looking to re-engage with council and make sure there's still support for this and moving forward with an updated appraisal, etc. So if there's any questions.
Thank you, council. Any questions for our planning manager? Councillor McLean?
Yeah, thank you. What guarantees would we have for how long we'd be able to use this lot as parking? I note that it mentions until a new build takes place, but could we make that a little more firm if possible?
At this time, that's just a suggestion of the applicant. I know there have been previous discussions between the owner and district engineering staff in the past about the potential for temporary public parking, but I think that was a while ago. So that's currently just a suggestion that would have to be explored further, and actual definition put around it in terms of area and timelines, etc. So that would definitely be something we would have to do. At this moment, it's just a suggestion from the applicant.
Okay, on the bottom of page 34, it says the proposed area would require cleanup before it could be used for parking purposes. Who would have to do that cleanup? Or has that been determined, or is that something that would need to be determined?
That's something that would be need to be determined. I think from the applicant's perspective, it's probably their thought that the district would be responsible for that. But again, that's something that would need to be determined moving forward if there was a role to have temporary public parking.
Thank you, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Hall touched on it just at the very end of that last sentence there, in that, you know, for the property owner to come forward with this road closure and disposition of this laneway, totally statutory process, totally within their right to, you know, propose, request, what have you. My understanding is that, you know, the suggestion of the parking is sort of a goodwill, you know, until they need the land for other purposes. And it's, you know, it's not necessarily like we would consider a community amenity as part of a rezoning application or anything like that. This is just, the statutory process is this. They've offered this as a potential, but if we do want to go down that road, that's where we do have to look at other items, right?
Mr. Hall, did you have anything to say to that?
No, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, yeah, definitely the primary intent is the proposal to close the lane and consolidate it with their properties to create a more developable lot. The parking discussion is sort of an optional side benefit in the interim. So yeah, we would definitely need to be explored further. You know, if that's something we'd be interested in, how would that be secured? What would that look like? That might be something that could be factored into the land exchange agreement or a separate agreement. But the ultimate intent is to have the lane closed and consolidate their 3 properties into one larger, more functional piece.
Okay, so if I look at the recommendations that are in front of us here, it says, the number 2 says that council directs staff to proceed with reviewing it, preparing the land exchange agreement and road closure and disposition bylaw associated with the application. And there sounds like there's still some uncertainty around that. But the next one says that council authorize staff to execute the land exchange agreement. So I guess, is there sufficient certainty around those pieces that, and this would be to council, that we would delegate this to staff to execute, or is it something that we would want to come back to see how it plays out? Now, I know there is a timing piece in here, in that inside of this potential land exchange or disposition, if this was to move forward and we are doing work on Wharf Avenue, potentially there could be some parking made available to us while Wharf Avenue is being ripped up. So, moving it forward quickly is potentially to the district's benefit. But is this something that we want to delegate to staff? And I'm not saying either way, I'm just putting it out to council. And Councillor McLean.
Yeah, so I guess under the statutory process, there's a value placed on the land. And typically that value would come back to the district. So I guess an alternative proposal to this could be that we get those funds and we use it to rent parking elsewhere. So I think I'd really like to see what that amount ends up being, and then we can determine if this is the best place to rent parking for so many years. We can rent it on a different area in our downtown core. So the mayor asked the question, do we have enough certainty to execute this agreement? And I would say no at this point. So what I'd like to see is that we move forward with the land disposition. I'm in full support of that. That creates a good chunk of land for development, which is good for our community. But then what we do with those funds that we get from that, that's still up in the air for me.
Okay, council. On page 36, it indicates that the land area was appraised in January 2020 for $59,000. So that valuation would need to be updated. But I mean, we all know it's probably going to go up. It won't go down in this market. Okay, so any other questions? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. And this isn't so much a question for staff as I think it is for Councillor McLean. I understand where you're coming from. I agree. It sounds like a good idea. Let's look at how we're going to utilize this money. Do we rent the parking there? Do we spend some of it to clean up that lot? Do we rent land elsewhere? What do we do? I guess I see my uncertainty around it is, how does that process play out? Is the land exchange agreement separate from the parking, in which case, recommendations 2 and 3, totally fine as they stand. Maybe a recommendation 4, something that, staff report back with the amount received and possible uses to enhance parking in the downtown core, or something to that effect. But I see that Mr. Hall has his hand up, so.
Mr. Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, I guess the resolution around executing land exchange agreement was just thinking if it was specific to simply the road closure and disposition, so not getting into anything on the public parking side of things, just using the land exchange agreement to encapsulate the road closure and disposition process and all the responsibilities therein. And that's kind of the direction for there, not to thinking about the other potential aspects to it. So that was sort of the intent there, was just focused on simply the road closure and disposition, and not either getting into, spending the money either. Just here's a commercial appraisal, here's the price, here's the particulars of the bylaw, et cetera, and I'm just focused on that piece. So.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is there's two separate issues. One is just the land, the road closure and the disposition. We have to follow the process. The parking piece is totally separate from that. So the recommendations in front of us are with regards to the road closure and the disposition. Once we follow the process, if it's advertised to the community and we do what we need to do, then that can just be staff dealing with that. It doesn't have to go back to council to be moved forward should everything go as anticipated. That's one piece. And then so we could actually address those based on the recommendations on page 34, and then we could talk about the parking piece. So council, would you like to make some recommendations? Councillor Toth.
I will move recommendation 2 that council direct staff to proceed with reviewing the proposed road closure and prepare the land exchange agreement and road closure and disposition bylaw associated with the application. And recommendation 3 that council authorize staff to execute the land exchange agreement.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded? All right. Seeing no questions, all those in favor? Thank you. So then we can talk about parking. So would we like staff to potentially negotiate access to that land in the back for a period of time for parking? Councillor Todd.
Thank you. I've got a question first, I suppose. If the revenue received, whatever it was, I think it was 59,000 back in 2020, that revenue received, what would generally be the direction or funds that money would flow into?
And we have Mr. Douglas showing up.
If I may, through the chair, the good question. The first thing it has to go to is if there's any, like if you borrowed against that land and there's still any money owing against that land, it would have to go to pay that back first. In this case, there isn't. And as you guys were talking, I was looking that up in the community charter. But I think if there's no no debt owed on the land, then it can go into a reserve or utilize for a purpose of capital nature. Or I've heard that we want to rent a parking spot. I'd have to dig up a little bit of information before I'd say I was comfortable with that.
So given it's capital, right? It's land. I think what you're saying is, can it be used for operating, or does it have to stay as capital?
Exactly. I couldn't quite find the answer as we were talking, but I was looking it up, trying to give you the answer.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Allen showed up. Did you have something?
Can I just add one more thing? No, I'm good. Sorry.
Mr. Allen, was there anything you wanted to add, given that you appeared on our screen?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Director Douglas and I have been here the whole time observing this ongoing council meeting, so nice to participate as well. I don't want to prolong the discussion, and this really is probably more a discussion for staff, whether it's capital or not. But as council has reviewed many development applications in the downtown core recently in recent months, and parking and variances and what our rates and our parking rates are quite high and quite suburban and so forth. And so if funds could be used for something non-capital, we are eyeing a downtown parking study in the coming year, perhaps next year's budget. So that's something that would have to investigate, but we would like to rationalize our parking rates and what we're doing in Sechelt and what we can do. And some funding might go a long way in that regard.
Thank you. Councillor Toth and then Councillor McLean.
Thank you. I only sort of followed up on that because I wanted to ensure that something, that we could do something with the funds, that they wouldn't just flow into general revenue and be lost as part of a surplus somewhere. Whether it's, funneled into downtown revitalization reserve or a specific project like the parking study or acquiring some parking under lease. Honestly, I'm not worried about trying to spend that money right now at this time. I just wanted to know, that we could allocate it to a specific use, that it wasn't just going to flow into general revenue. So my questions have been answered, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I guess that speaks to my largest concern. Just using round numbers, this is $60,000, potentially more, coming into our coffers. Is parking the best use for that? That is a larger discussion that I'm not ready to have at this time. So but I do want to put it out there that this money may not necessarily go to parking. We need to look at what would be the best use of it.
Okay, and I'm not even looking at the money right now. I don't know what the money's going to be. I do know that the applicants on the bottom, page 34, indicated they are willing to offer the option of public parking at no cost to the District of Sechelt. So what that would mean is our staff would need to look at, is there liability for us? Is there, what would that look like? How many stalls would be there? How is it? Those kinds of things. Do we want staff to do that? I would say yes, that if there's an offer of parking, but there's going to have to be some kind of agreement between us and the property owner, number of years, whatever, so that if there's anything that we actually put into that, even if it's legal costs, that we have that covered off. Councillor Toth.
Wasn't ready for you. I was madly trying to craft a motion here, but nope, it's gone again. I'm sorry. It'll come back to me.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, that the mayor raises a good point, that the applicant did want to offer that. And I think there may be a misunderstanding, because I think this proposal has evolved since I first heard about it from the Downtown Business Association. So I think what we have here is solid direction, execute the land agreement, and let's see if they're still interested.
Okay, and I don't know if we necessarily want to make a motion, or we need to make a motion. I think staff are going to negotiate with the property owner once this process flows forward or moves forward. Director Toth, or Councillor Toth, sorry, that's tomorrow.
No, I don't think so. I hope not. Anyways,
Next week.
I did remember, and then that was the comment around it being at no cost. And ultimately, as part of this, we would need to know, if we can use this for parking, there is some cleanup that needs to be done, some signage, there is cost associated with that. So for it to be no cost is either coming out of the funds that would be received from the land transfer or from the applicant, or we have to put up something out of the downtown revitalization reserve. But ultimately, I'm hesitant to believe that it's truly no cost to the District of Sechelt for the parking, which is fine. We should know what that cost is when that comes back to us.
Right. I think what the intention is that the landowner will not charge us for parking. I think that's kind of the intention. Yes, there will probably be some costs because we may need to do, for example, some insurance on it or something. We don't know what that is, but if staff have the direction from council that we are interested in having them look at that, I'm sure if there's something they need from us, they'll come back and ask. All right. I don't see anything further on this. Mr. Hall, I think you have what you need.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 10.3, and this is the late item. This is the filming request for rental of Trail Bay Pier, and I'm going to turn over to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, this item is somewhat time sensitive, and so we appreciate Council's indulgence in allowing us to bring this forward as a late agenda item. The purpose of this report is for Council to approve, subject to certain conditions, authorizing a film production company to film on Trail Bay Pier for 4 days later this month in March, and also to seek direction on developing a policy, a council policy, and application procedures to deal with film production companies in the future that want to use the district's facilities. So by way of background, as Council will probably recall, in 2020, staff brought forward a proposal suggesting that the district may want to register our facilities on the Creative BC Film Location website, which is the website that film companies use to find inventory and in places that they can film. And so Council did approve that, and we have received some interest along the way, but the first sort of really legit one, or where it was more than just seeking or just showing some interest, is we have had a company come forward. Love Me Productions is the name of the company, and they have written us the letter that is attached to the staff report, which describes their proposal. But in essence, they are looking to come and film around our Trail Bay Pier, including in the water around it, a film. And they're looking to, and so they're asking basically if they can use our pier on March 25th and then 28th, 29th, and 30th. And so the Trail Bay Pier, as Council is aware, is actually a water lot lease that we have with the province. And as noted here in the staff report, one of the sections of the lease does require, or does say that we are not allowed to sub-license, sub-permit, what have you, without getting the province's approval. So this item has come forward now, and per the recommendation, is to get Council's, I guess, endorsement in principle, if you will, for staff to move forward. And then our community services coordinator proposes or plans to meet with the production company next week. I think Tuesday she's meeting with them to hammer out a lot of these details. But she felt that it was important that she bring it forward to Council to just get a sense of whether you wish her to even meet with the applicant and look at this. So the recommendation there in front of you on page 40 is basically, recommending that staff be able to work with the company and deal with some of the issues that are laid out here. We, at this time, the first and most important one is we haven't been able to reach the province of BC yet to get their approval. We just got this request a couple days ago. So that's going to be number one, is trying to work with them to allow this to happen. And then, meeting, liaising with neighboring businesses and Shishal and Lehigh and other community members. And then, making sure that the company has the required insurance and those kinds of things. And then another one, a big one, is investigating what we would be charging this company to use our pier. And right now, we don't have any fee established, so that would be part of the work. Staff would bring forward a policy and a proposed amended fees and charges bylaw to the next council meeting. And, there's a number of costs we have to look at. There, as they mentioned, they want to bring the float out because they want to do some filming on that. Their staff is it's all going to be at their cost, their staff time, their everything to do it. So there's those types of costs. So as noted here, the recommendation is for council to grant permission for Love Me Productions to film on the pier, subject to the conditions laid out, and then we are our community services coordinator, if council approves this, plans to do the work necessary in meeting with them and then bring back a report to the next council meeting that will include some policy that we can use moving forward, or suggested policy, and as I say, an amendment to our fees and charges bylaw setting out what we would like to charge them. And that's my report. Thank you.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. The corporate officer actually touched on my question, which was around the having our dock that's currently in winter storage put out for use. I guess my question around it is that structure something that we pay, like that we have to hire a contractor to put out, or is that something that we normally do in-house? And what it's about that time of year, I would think, for that to be going out for the season anyways. So I just wanted to double check those two things. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Douglas, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, the dock that is placed there is done by an external contractor under our direction, of course.
So what I'm understanding is that the film company would actually pay for it to be brought out. If it's not, I don't know the timing as well. I don't know I think it's too soon yet, but if it is not to stay out, they would also have to pay for it to be removed and put back. That would be part of their costs. Any other questions on the report? Councillor McLean?
Nope, no questions. So I'm going to move recommendation 2 through 5, and unfortunately, I'm not going to read them.
That's fine. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. This is exciting to have this come forward. All right. Next up on our agenda is reports from councillors. We'll start with Councillor McLean, Scott, Kuster, Toth, and then Rowe. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. I mentioned it earlier, but had a really good meet with the Chatleys Drag Racing Chatleys Drag Racing Club with Councillor Toth and Scott. Very informative, very passionate kids who are really training their skills. So I really want to thank them for showing us around up there. Sat in at the SCRD a couple weeks ago. That was a good time up there. Attended a lot of short-term rental meetings, and you may have heard in the news that BC Ferries will be extending their modified schedule. I will be meeting with them through the Ferry Advisory Committee tomorrow. So if there's any feedback that council would like me to pass on, please let me know.
Thank you. Councillor Scott?
Yeah, as Councillor McLean mentioned, we met with the kids up at the high school. It was really good to see them and see what they're doing, and yeah, they're very interested in the short-term rental stuff and watching how that develops, and that's about it. I'm training right now, so.
Thank you. Councillor Kuster.
I attended APC last night. It was just a great overview from Director Allen of the short-term rental bylaw and the zoning that will be coming forward. We have 2 new APC members, and I think they're going to add some great input to APC this coming up year. I also attended Library Board. They have their AGM coming up at March 26th. And of course, they're looking for 3 new board members if anyone knows anyone. Nominations can be picked up at the library. There was a ad out in the paper on February 25th. They also applied for the Sunshine Coast Healthcare Auxiliary Grant to fund an adult chair yoga program, which they started in 2021. And just lots of things going on. They're offering their tax free taxes. I think it's on Tuesday between 10 to 4 by appointment. And yeah, just Leanne has lots of programs going on. So I encourage anyone to just, check it out. It's just amazing actually what they offer there. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Councillor McLean and Scott already touched on the drag racing team up at chat. I just wanted to echo that I appreciate their enthusiasm for the program. They are passionate kids, and it was good to hear that they're willing to help do what it takes to be able to race closer to home. They're like, we're not afraid to fundraise, we're not afraid to get our hands dirty. So it was really nice to hear from them, about how they wanted to be able to help move things forward. I attended an information meeting on the timber supply review process for our area. It's not going to be a quick process. The province goes through it about every decade or so. There will be opportunities for public feedback through the process. I hope that the public feedback opportunities are more interesting than that session was, because it was a bit of a bore. But one thing that I did take away from that I thought was really interesting was that there's 1.8 million hectares of land within the timber supply area. But by the time you do your takeaways for private land and riparian areas and things that they don't have sufficient data on, you're only looking at about 188,000 hectares of harvestable timber base. So only 10% of the area is actually harvestable. Attended a SCAF meeting. We heard from them around short-term rentals and how the community associations are affected. I did manage to get to 2 of the public information sessions on short-term rentals, but the ones that I did make it to had pretty good turnout. So I think it was 25 and 35 people at the 2 sessions that I made it to. So yeah, that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. Yep, as Councillor Toth just said, I attended the SCAF meeting and a couple of the short-term rental sessions that, yes, were very well attended, and lots of stuff in the group chat, and pretty interactive. So that was good to see. And we had our initial CIP grant program meeting yesterday, and we'll be undertaking that process for the month of March, essentially. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, 1 second. All right. As you know, I was away on vacation for a bit. It was fabulous, and now I'm back. And I still haven't got caught up on my email. So if you sent me an email and I haven't responded yet, I think I have about 1,000 between the 2 email addresses to respond to. So I'm looking to try and get through them by the end of the week. May not happen. So please be patient. I did attend a number of the SDR engagement sessions. Kudos to the consultant and staff. They're already responding to some of the input that we've received from the community about things that maybe weren't quite right or whatever. So good to know. And the survey, for those of you who have not participated yet or still want to contribute, the short-term rental survey is live. It is on the District of Sechelt website. It is open until the 14th. So please go on there and fill that out. The last session, the word was getting out, I think, in the community a lot. Last session had over 50 people attending, so that's really good. It's nice to see that. I attended the Downtown Business Association AGM. That was, I think, last week. And it was in person. Well, it was kind of a hybrid. We had some people in person and some people via Zoom. And they laid out their plans for the upcoming year. Great ideas. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do and how they move forward. And as we all know, that their bylaw got approved for funding. So they are in business for another 5 years. I took part this last week in the federal budget, lead up to the federal budget with our MP, Patrick Weiler. He had set up for 3 different sessions, one for the Sunshine Coast here. So there were, we had Mayor Beamish on there. We had Colin Stansfield from Scredo on there. We had community services. So there were a number of people from different sectors, all putting forward what their issues, concerns, requests were in the budget. So I had gone to staff at both the district of Sechelt and the regional district and made sure that our items are known. One of the things was 100% funding for infrastructure like that, but there were a number of other things on the list as well. I've been having some meetings with Capilano University around childcare on the Sunshine Coast. One of the things that we know is that we have a number of childcare facilities that do not have sufficient staff, and we potentially have more coming on board that need to have staff. As well, we require some of the staff who have completed their certification to do additional training for infant and toddler spaces. So CAPU is looking at putting courses forward this fall to address some of those issues. May is Childcare Month, so we're looking to get word out into the community for people who are in the industry to come forward and potentially others who are not in the industry to come forward. The province is actually providing some funding for courses, so we're going to make sure it's very clear what funding is available for people who would like to get into this industry, and also what the job openings would be like if they come out the other end. I had Monday morning, I got to go and introduce myself and wish congratulations to a local resident who turned 100. It was a PhD doctor living in Sechelt, and the doctor, in her previous role, I guess, she left as a young mother and brought her children out of war-torn Europe. And then when her husband joined her, she actually started working in industrial design and became a professor at one of the universities in the States at a time when women weren't professors and doing that, and so has a lot of impact on the engineering department coming out of that university. It was Auburn University. So she was thrilled that I dropped off a letter and had a very brief conversation with her, and she looks amazing. I never would have thought she's 100. She looks amazing. Anyway, it was quite an honor to do that. I attended the emergency housing meeting, and that was it's happening every couple months, and looking at where we are with the process that's moving forward. Right now, the positions have closed for the housing manager and for the homelessness coordinator, and the tenders or whatever, the submissions are being evaluated. So those should be awarded fairly soon. Two things upcoming. Tomorrow night, talk to your local government. If you have Eastlink cable, we'll be on there again being grilled by one of our locals. That's at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. And then just today, it was announced, or it was put out, that next week, Tuesday, the 8th, there will be a groundbreaking for the Church Road Wellfield. That's at 11:30 in the morning on next Tuesday, and that will be open to the public. So we're going to be doing a groundbreaking and get that project moving forward. That's all I have. Next up, SCRD report. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I was contemplating whether I was going to have to interrupt you with a motion to extend, but I think we'll be able to get it done here. But I don't have a whole lot to report other than what's in the report. As I commented at the last council meeting, I had missed the infrastructure meeting, and Director Allen pointed out here earlier in the week that the unit numbers on page 44 that I included seemed a little off. I agree. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch the numbers or see those numbers until after our agenda was published because I wasn't at that meeting. And I haven't had an opportunity to find out where and how they came to some of the numbers that they did. Other than that, happy to take any questions. And because it's mentioned in the SCRD report, regarding election timeline, 227 days until the election. Thank you.
You keep giving us a countdown. All right, nothing further there. Moving on to item 12.1. This is release of items from closed meeting. And I'd look for a motion as presented. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. And then moving on to council correspondence. We haven't received council correspondence, have we? We just received the reports. Okay. I'd look for a motion to receive the correspondence. Moved. Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And any items on here that council would like to action? I'm going to look at the last one first while you're going through them. This is the Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program request. It's a request that we send a letter to, I forget which minister, one of the ministers, in support of the Farmers Market Nutrition Program. So I'd like to make a recommendation. Minister of Health, okay. I'd like to make a recommendation that we do that. Is there a seconder? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Any others? Number 1 is about Ebbtide Dog Park renaming. We've gotten lots of letters on that. Is there anything council would like to do? Councillor Toth.
Councillor McLean begged me not to bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. The with regards to the Ebbtide Dog Park renaming or naming, I suppose, since we have not opened the facility yet, I think I had asked a couple of meetings ago if we'd had any sort of policy or direction from the staff side on how we name parks and items. My apologies, I don't remember the response that was given at the time, but I see the corporate officers shown up, so I'll wait and see if we have a policy or a procedure or something like that around how we name our parks.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. The district does actually have a park naming policy that was last updated in 2009, so it's out of date. And actually, the reason that you see these emails addressed to myself is because of that policy. The public, all our policies are on our webpage, so the public was able to access that on their own. And that outdated policy says that, you know, if anybody wants to petition council to name a park, that their petition go to the corporate officer, who will then in turn refer it to a now defunct standing committee. So that's why you see these in front of us. In order to maintain the intent of that policy, we've brought them all forward here. So we do have a policy, but as I say, it's outdated, and we felt it was better to bring it forward here.
Councillor Schatz, do you want to have a follow-up for that?
I just wanted to say that I'm impressed at the community outpouring of support for this process and for naming this park. I don't know, I didn't know Miss Bowers, but I would be interested in moving this forward if the rest of council is interested or willing.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
So, Councillor Toth, I mentioned that because it's getting late and I wanted a fulsome discussion. But here we are. So I'll bring my thoughts. I like Councillor Toth, I really want to thank everyone who's brought forward these letters. I think Jane Bowers had a huge impact on this community. Right from her work with the District of Sechelt, to her volunteering work, to her work with dogs. There's no doubt that there's a huge legacy there. And all these letters, I didn't actually count how many we have, really speaks to that. And she should be honored that all these people want to honor her, because there's no doubt that she deserves it. The question for me is, what is our priority when naming parks? I kind of see 3 approaches. First is the one that suggested we could name it after something, name it after someone, recognize something. Second is we can have a functional name. So allowing people to find it the most basic name, and that's what the Ebb Tide Dog Park is. It's a dog park on Ebb Tide Street. Fairly descriptive. And then the last one, our way of naming a park I would consider is looking at some bigger objectives. Why, what else might we want to achieve with how we name our parks? And the big question I have there is, should we name our parks in an act of reconciliation? Should we be using Indigenous names as we name our parks? I believe so, but that's not something I'm ready to do at this moment. I haven't discussed it with our colleagues at the Sea Shelp Nation, and that needs a much larger discussion that I'm not ready to have at this point. So my preference would be to default back to that functional name, and then we can have that proper conversation with the Sea Shelp Nation to figure out what would be a more appropriate name for this park.
Okay, so how about if, given we are close to 10 o'clock, that we actually just refer this to staff to review it in light of the policy we have in place, and then they can bring it back. Because we may have to look at, does it fit our policy? We don't know that. And then, we can have more of a discussion when that comes back. Councillor Toth?
Thank you. I was going to suggest that when it comes back, it actually comes back to a committee of the whole, so that we can have a more open, I don't want to use the word fulsome, but a more open discussion around, naming how we name it, if we're going to name it the Jane Bowers Dog Park, or what we're going to name it. And that way too, regardless of what else is on the agenda, we can give it proper respect of process without having to worry about running into that 10 o'clock time.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a recommendation? All right, Councillor Toth.
I guess I will move that we refer this to staff to confirm, to confirm against our.
Maybe just to review in light of our policy and come back to a committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded. Any further comments, questions? All those in favor? Thank you. All right. Any other correspondence that you'd like to deal with? Going once? Going twice? Moving on. We have number 13, Mayor, Council, and Staff emergency items. And I'm going to go to our corporate officer for this because we have no sound on the other end, and the other person who usually does the cameo appearance.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do not have any emergency items at this time.
Thank you. I would look for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all in favor?